Over the years, the government has denied and gone to extreme lengths to hide the existence of aliens. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 times that the government hid the existence of aliens. Starting off this countdown, we have the destroyed evidence. On the morning of July 14th, 1948, two pilots were flying from Houston to Atlanta with their 20 passengers. That's when all of a sudden they saw a UFO fly by clear as day. This was witnessed by the two pilots and one of the passengers. The others were fast asleep when this happened. One of the pilots said, and I quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were two rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Under the ship, there was a glow of blue light." They all watched this craft for about 10 seconds until it disappeared. Obviously, they reported their findings, and this triggered a top-secret investigation by the US government. In the end, their findings were destroyed, which means it probably is a real UFO encounter because the government was like, hide it, destroy the findings. Coming in at number 9, we have Leah Haley. In 1990, a woman named Leah Haley was randomly abducted by aliens. She remembers being on a spacecraft in a round room surrounded by bright lights. When she woke up, she found herself lying on her back on an examination table. Weird alien-type figures surrounded her. Later, she decided to undergo hypnosis to try and remember more information about her abduction. And that's when she realized that the military probably had something to do with this. When Leah started to say that the military was involved in her abduction, she was actually abducted by members of the US military and interrogated. They apparently told her that she was not supposed to tell anyone or else they would kill her. And what did she do? She told everyone, so. She's still alive, I think, though. Then over the years, she was offered jobs randomly by total strangers for positions at nearby military bases. So she believes that she was chosen by the military for some specific reason. Although the military threatened her, in 1992, she published a book titled Lost Was the Key, and it's all about her alien abduction experience. And at number 7, we have the astronauts. Okay, so you might not believe random strangers being like, yeah, I saw a UFO, but what about credible astronauts? What about Buzz Aldrin himself? Because he says that he witnessed a UFO. So here's the thing. There was this huge hoax going on for a while claiming that Aldrin said he saw aliens while in space. That part is fake. There was no aliens. He didn't see aliens, he saw an unidentified object floating outside the window of the Apollo 11 spacecraft. At first, he thought it was part of a detached rocket. That was until Mission Control confirmed that it was 6,000 miles away from them. So it wasn't part of the rocket. He thinks it was a UFO. And he's not the only astronaut to believe or see UFOs. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell and Catherine Coleman and scientist Dr. Brian O'Leary believe the government is hiding information on them and aliens. Coming in at number 7, we have the cornfield. This next story comes from a man that grew up in a cornfield. Not actually in it, but like near one. Their name was never released for privacy reasons, so I'm gonna call him Bob. So one night, Bob saw something fly down from the sky and hover right above their farm. It was shaped like a rectangle and it was glowing light. Then it left as fast as it came. The next day, Bob and his family were greeted by two men in black suits with dark sunglasses. They said that they needed to inspect their farm because there was some natural gas leak. It was very strange because mostly everything on the farm was run by solar energy. Alas, the men were from the government, so Bob was like, you know what, you're the authority, you do you, boo-boo. The men then went to the area where the UFO had been the night prior. So Bob was like to the men, you know, I did see a UFO here. And the men were like, bro, if you ever repeat that again, we're gonna kill you, basically. The men also said that they were going to arrest him for making up lies and endangering people. We are now at our 6th spot with pilot Frederick Valentic. On October 21st of 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentic was partaking in a 125 nautical mile training flight when he disappeared into thin air. It's important to note that Frederick was a very experienced pilot. So around 7:06 p.m. that night, he radioed to his crew saying that an unidentified craft was following him. He described it as having 4 bright lights with a shiny metallic exterior. His final words were, "It's hovering, it's not an aircraft. Then his signal cut out and he was never heard from again. Frederick or his craft were never found. And many people think that he was shot down or abducted by the UFO that he saw. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the mutilated sergeant. Now, if you saw my other video, then you know I have talked about this case, so I'll just kind of run over it briefly, and if you want an in-depth, then go check out that other video. So there were 2 guys. One was Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett, and then there was Major William Cunningham. And they were out collecting debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico when Lovett let out a huge scream. And Cunningham was scared and he ran over and he saw Lovett literally being abducted by a UFO craft. Okay, he radioed for help. When help came, he was all shaken up and like freaking out. And Lovett was never found until 3 days later when his body was found severely mutilated and burned. And so Cunningham thinks that he was abducted, they ran experiments on him, ate him, I don't know, and then just discarded his body. It's freaky, I know. What's even more freaky is that the government actually made a report of this, and then all of a sudden the report just vanished into thin air. Suspicious. In our 4th spot today, we have Melinda Leslie. Melinda Leslie from Orange County, California, leads a support group for alien abductees. More than 36 of her abductees say that they were taken aboard an alien spacecraft and then later re-abducted by apparent military personnel and subjected to physical examinations and interrogation. She herself was a victim of this. She remembers humans in a flying triangle abducting her and taking her to an underground testing facility. There, a number of men in hazmat suits were running tests on her. And then she was abducted a second time. This time by a red-haired military captain who told her to tell him everything that she knew about aliens. In our 3rd spot today, we have the 2 fishermen. On October 11th of 1973, 2 friends, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, decided to go out fishing on a river in Mississippi. That's when a bright light came out of nowhere. Parker reported, and I quote, "It was a blinding light. It was hard to tell with the light so bright, but it looked like it was shaped like a football." He said it was about 80 feet or so and made very little sound. It was kind of like a hissing noise. But it gets weirder. He then claimed that this legless creature came out of it. They described this creature as having mitten-shaped claws. One was necklace and gray, the other was more feminine. So it probably had, you know what I'm saying. The friends started freaking out, and that's when they wrapped their hands around their necks and all of a sudden calmed down. Parker thinks that they were secretly injected with something and that's why they calmed down. After that, he claims they went on board the vessel and were experimented on. When they got out of there, they went straight to the police, who alerted the military. The military interrogated them multiple times and tried to silence them. Coming in at number 2, we have the Roswell UFO. This is said to be the most famous UFO case in America. So it takes place during the summer of 1947. A rancher named W.W. MacBrazel said he found wreckage on his big plot of land. In fact, during that time, there was a lot of UFO sightings, so it kind of makes sense that wreckage was found on his land. So he brought that material to the sheriff, who brought it to an officer from the U.S. Army Air Force. Later, the U.S. Army announced that what the rancher found was a flying disc. But suddenly, days later, the U.S. Army retracted their statement. They said, oh no, it wasn't a UFO. No, it was just part of a weather balloon. Years later, in 1994, they admitted that the weather balloon story was fake. Over the years, hundreds of UFO sightings have been reported in that area. Several eyewitnesses also claimed that they saw alien bodies being taken from a government test site. But the government was like, those weren't aliens, those were just test dummies, haha, fooled you. Suspicious. So it seems like the government has UFOs and aliens out in Roswell. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Kendall Folk. Kendall Folk is another woman who has been abducted by aliens multiple times throughout her life. At first, she thought these abductions were by real aliens. Later, she was able to debunk her own abductions and realize the truth. Kendall believes that she was targeted by the military due to her mental health issues. This sadly made her an easy target because people thought like, oh, it's just because she has mental health issues. So people wouldn't validate her claims. She remembers during one abduction that she was taken from her home in a UFO craft. Later, she remembers that it was not a UFO craft, but in fact, it was a car on her driveway. Now, she remembers how weird the alien was. It walked very robotic, and she believes that it's because it wasn't a real alien. In fact, it was a robot from the government. The military used this so that Kendall would think that it was a real alien abduction. They later drugged her and brought her back to a facility where tests were done on her, which is actually crazy. Like, is the government faking alien abductions to then run tests on people? Like, convincing them that they were abducted by aliens, no one believes them, and then they're getting tests run on them. I don't know, folks. You can let me know in the comments below. That's all for today's video, folks. If you like this, maybe you want to see a part 2, then let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, smash that like button. Obviously, subscribe to my channel. I've been your host, Lindsay Ivan. Stick around for some bloopers if there is any, and I'll show you when I show you. Bye. Okay. Underneath the ship, there was a blue of glow. What? In the end, also, that's all.